It started innocently enough, a road trip to escape the mundane routine of our lives. My best friend Claire and I had planned everything meticulously, stops along the way, playlists, and even roadside diners we wanted to try. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of crimson and indigo, we found ourselves far from any town and nowhere near our planned stop. The highway stretched endlessly into the night, a ribbon of asphalt flanked by dense trees. The only light came from our car's headlights, cutting through the oppressive darkness. We were tired, hungry, and desperate for a place to rest when the faint glow of neon appeared in the distance. "The Blue Pines Inn," Claire read aloud as we approached the worn-out sign. The vacancy light flickered erratically, casting eerie shadows on the gravel lot. It wasn't the cozy bed and breakfast we'd imagined, but at that moment we didn't care. The motel's lobby was as unassuming as the exterior: wood-paneled walls, a dusty counter, and a single buzzing overhead light. Behind the counter stood an elderly man with sunken eyes and a demeanor that seemed as faded as the room itself. "Welcome," he said, his voice raspy. "Looking for a room?" "Yes, please," I replied, my fatigue outweighing the unease creeping up my spine. He hesitated, his gaze flicking briefly to the wall behind me before nodding. "Room 9, he said, sliding a key across the counter. The key felt cold in my hand, colder than it should have been, as though it had been sitting in a freezer. Claire and I thanked him and headed down the hallway. The corridor was dimly lit, with walls adorned with faded floral wallpaper and a carpet that muffled our footsteps. We passed room 6, then room 7, and room 8, but there was no room 9. "Did we miss it?" Claire asked, her brow furrowed. We retraced our steps, but room 9 was nowhere to be found. Frustrated, we returned to the lobby. The manager was still there, seated behind the counter with a blank expression. "There's no room 9, I said, holding up the key. He looked at us for a long moment, his face pale and eyes distant. "It's there," he said quietly. "Keep walking." Before we could question him further, he stood and disappeared into a back room, leaving us alone in the unsettling silence of the lobby. Uneasy, but too tired to argue, we returned to the hallway. And there it was. Room 9. The door was old and weathered, its number hanging slightly askew. Claire unlocked it and pushed it open. The room was small but clean. A single bed, an armchair in the corner, and a window overlooking the parking lot. A faint metallic smell lingered in the air, one I couldn't place but found strangely unsettling. "Looks fine to me," Claire said, tossing her bag onto the bed. But something about the room felt wrong. The air was heavy, as if it carried an invisible weight, and the silence was too perfect, too complete. That first night I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of wind outside, made me jump. Around midnight, the television turned on by itself, its screen flickering with static. Claire dismissed it as faulty wiring and unplugged it, but the unease lingered. At 2 a.m., I woke to a faint tapping sound. It was soft at first, like the ticking of a clock, but it grew louder and more deliberate. I froze, listening. The sound was coming from the closet. "Claire," I whispered, shaking her awake. "What is it?" she mumbled, half asleep. "Do you hear that?" We both listened and the tapping continued. Claire, always the braver of the two of us, got up and opened the closet door. It was empty. "See?" she said, though her voice lacked its usual confidence. She closed the door and the tapping stopped, only to start again moments later, this time from the window. We turned to look. The curtains were drawn, but the faint outline of a hand pressed against the fabric was unmistakable. My breath hitched. "Don't open it," I pleaded. But Claire, ever curious, pulled the curtains aside. There was nothing there. We spent the rest of the night huddled together, too afraid to move. When dawn finally broke, we packed our things and went straight to the lobby to check out. The manager was gone, the desk empty. Desperate to leave, we left the key on the counter and headed to the car. As we drove away, Claire turned to me, her face pale. "Do you still have the room key?" "No," I said. "I left it on the counter." She held up the key, her hands trembling. "Then how did this get in my pocket?" A chill ran down my spine. We didn't stop driving until we were miles away. Later, I searched online for information about the Blue Pines Inn. What I found sent shivers down my spine. Years ago, Room 9 had been the site of a grisly double murder. The room had been sealed off, but guests reported seeing it appear at times, as if it refused to be forgotten. Even now, I can't shake the feeling that something followed us that night. Every so often, I find the key to Room 9 in strange places. My bag, my bedside table, even my car. And every time I see it, I hear the faint sound of tapping as if something is trying to get in.